Helena Darcel kicked off her sandals and exited her home office through the French doors, emerging into her courtyard garden. She paused and inhaled deeply, allowing the magic to surround her and draw her further into the tropical paradise she had created. The palm trees and green banana plants rustled faintly, responding to her presence. She moved toward the central waterfall, where the water glided over stones worn silk-smooth by decades of patient devotion, spilling into a shallow pool below. Helena settled onto the stone edge, dropping her bare feet into the water. She closed her eyes, savoring the magic swirling in, around, and through her. This was the hour Helena preferred. Not working, not watching, just being. The garden was her sanctuary, her balance, hidden behind a boring hacienda facade, its walls concealing the paradise within. She had begun creating it decades earlier, back when the surrounding land had been empty Nevada desert. Now she was nearly encircled by housing developments. Yet she had remained hidden, even from the ever-increasing intrusions from above. The courtyard, and the atmosphere above it, were charmed to exist only within the nature realm. Its true form could not be seen from above by human or electronic eyes. From inside, the sky overhead was wide and clear, untouched by flight paths or light pollution. Her night sky was scattered with bright stars and a moon that looked close enough to touch. It was early evening when the summons came. Helena was still seated at the pool's edge, eyes closed, when the air shifted. Not dramatically, not violently, just enough that the water paused. She opened her eyes. The summons did not arrive as light or flame or voice. It came as certainty, a gentle but immovable pressure settling just behind her thoughts. You are required. Helena sighed. She didn't argue. Summons like this weren't requests, and pretending otherwise only wasted time. Still, she allowed herself a few moments longer, fingers trailing in the water, grounding herself in the garden she had built and the life she had chosen. The summons was from the elemental witches of the council. That alone was disturbing. Elemental witches did not summon eclectics. Historically, they avoided them. They believed eclectics adapted too quickly and crossed too many boundaries. They disliked that eclectics treated magic as life itself, something to be lived fully and unconditionally, rather than something to be observed and tightly controlled. Eclectics had a habit of refusing to stay within the lanes other witches found reassuring, an approach that made most practitioners deeply uncomfortable. That was why most older eclectic witches preferred solitude. Newer ones, raised in an era when witchcraft had become fashionable, were far more social. Helena was not a new witch by any definition. She had established her solitude decades ago, long before covens became trendy and long before magic learned to ride on signal. Still, she envied the young ones, a little. With another sigh, Helena rose, brushed her hands on her jeans, and glanced once at the garden. I'll be back, she promised. The water acknowledged the promise by resuming its flow. The first thing Helena noticed when she stepped out of the airport was the cold. The second thing she noticed was the wind, sharp and insistent, shoving that cold into every thin seam of clothing she wore. She'd had a stopover in San Francisco, but she hadn't left the airport, and the plane to the Redwood Coast had been small, but warm, warmer than this at least. Even though she was surrounded by humans, she closed her eyes briefly and nudged a little heat into her pockets, then into the lining of her jacket. It was subtle magic, the kind she'd been using for so long she barely thought of it as spell work at all. Thankfully, she had booked her rental car ahead of time and was quickly inside. Once the door closed, she increased the warming spell and allowed her mind to wander. The summons had given no indication of why she was being ordered to present herself to the council, only that she was expected to comply. Everyone on the West Coast knew there was a regional council headquarters somewhere in Northern California, but Helena had never been there. She had been in Las Vegas for nearly 60 years now. She sometimes went to Red Rock or the barren Arizona desert to celebrate the Sabbats, but she had come to enjoy the chaos of modern Las Vegas. Once her toes had thawed, Helena cast a map to Eureka onto the windshield. Technology was catching up to some of her minor magic, but she doubted this car was capable of projecting navigation data on its own. So she made certain the map was invisible from outside. According to the overlay, the drive would take 35 minutes. If she had been here before, she could have let the car handle the route itself. Since she hadn't, she drove manually, mildly irritated that the council hadn't bothered to send transportation. It never occurred to her that what she considered common magic was nearly impossible for many witches. The onboard systems of modern vehicles and the more interesting ways to manipulate them remained a mystery to most practitioners. As she got closer to Eureka, Helena changed the map to her actual destination. She discovered that the phrase, "not far," has a very different meaning in Northern California. There were so many twists, turns, and unexpected forks that she had no choice but to ask for the car's help. Eventually, she pulled into what appeared to be a small picnic area. The parking lot was nearly deserted. Almost immediately, a magical marker appeared near one of the trailheads. Helena braced herself for the wind and stepped out of the car. To her surprise, the cold receded the moment her feet hit the ground. She was already inside the folded space. The council must have extended a recognition spell over the parking area, thankfully. Too bad it hadn't reached the airport. Since she was fully within a magical boundary now, Helena left her purse and keys in the car. She paused, letting herself look around. Even without enhancement, the place was beautiful, quiet, but amazingly alive. She made a mental note to check the map for a stream later, after whatever was about to happen. The marker led her down the trail several hundred feet. She knew the path was staged. The council could have placed the entrance anywhere. She was being observed. No sooner had the thought settled than an arch appeared across the trail. It formed smoothly, stone, air, and intention, opening into a swirl of blue and white fog. Awe-inspiring, yes, but also unexpectedly welcoming. Helena stepped through without hesitation. She emerged into an enormous hallway lined with identical arches, each one swirling with muted blue light. To the right, the corridor extended endlessly. To the left, it ended at an arch with an actual door. That caught her attention. As she approached, the door opened. Helena stepped through and found herself once again in the forest, or rather, a forest. This one was shaped, curated, unmistakably constructed by elemental magic. At its center sat an ornate round table. The witches gathered around it watched her with eyes that did not merely observe but assess. Helena stopped. Oh, she thought. These were old witches. Very old witches. The magic doesn't end here. It moves. It gathers. It returns. Like and follow to see where it flows next.